Keith, the good people at World Rugby once deigned to make you the World Rugby Player of the Year, but what if your own people don't put you on their sporting Mount Rushmore?
I know, thank God I'm not picking the four anyway, that's for certain. And yeah, would I be upset? Do you know what, I'd get over it. But I've loved listening to this for the last few weeks, actually, and listening to the guys that have been left in and left out. It's kind of entertaining. And you know what? That little clip with Ronan O'Gara saying, yeah, we're all competitive. You're dead right, we're all competitive. You know, there's no way around that fact at all. It's kind of what made sports people in the first place.
Exactly, yeah. I'm going to breach a lot of confidences here, but I'm fairly sure that Ronan O'Gara was lobbying from before the actual day itself. So I don't know if you've been in touch with Still O'Connor and Jamesie O'Connor. I just want to, if you want to confess to it, that's fine. It appears as if that is the done thing.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I won't do that, though I do love Jamesie and everything he stands for. But no, I haven't been in contact whatsoever.
Is Clare?
I'd have a little bit of association with them, but that's about it.
Is Clare exclusively Hurling County, or it's not really? What kind of sporting county was it for you to grow up in?
I think it was a Hurling County. We had rugby, and we'll talk about that in a while, but for me, it was growing up in Killaloe. The first game I played, no, you watched anything on telly and you played whatever was on the telly. You know, there wasn't much on the telly. We only had the one channel, really. But you wanted to get out onto the hurling field, which was about 250 yards from my house. And it was just hurling. Now, it's funny, it's different to what kids do now, which is they do a huge amount of training. We did seem to do a huge amount of matches, and we played all the age levels. It didn't matter what age you were. You played about 6 years up anyway, because we were a small village and Smith O'Brien's was a small club. But it was pure, unadulterated hurling. And actually, we grew up with the idea that we hadn't won for years. So we were bitter. And there was that sense of, could it be our year? And it just didn't happen time after time after time. So our hearts were broken by hurling from a Clare perspective. But from a club perspective, we wouldn't have been a top-notch hurling club. We would have been intermediate at our senior level, and we would have been B, not A, in the championship in under 12s, 14s, 16s. But I loved it, and I have to still say, to this day, it's my favourite sport to have played in terms of the skill that was required. There's a kind of madness and a joy to hurling that it's a crazy game, you know, and we played with no helmets, or helmets were only just coming in, but there were absolutely no face masks. And, you know, there was a touch of madness to it. And actually, when you start looking at some of the players that will go on Clare's Mount Rushmore, you're looking at a touch of madness as well.
Absolutely. Was Loughnane then the kind of... Because it's impossible for me to remember what it would have been like to watch Loughnane hurl on Clare teams that were good but not great, or not good enough to get over the great teams that they were going up against. Was he a totemic figure as a player as well as a manager?
Well, he was, long before he was a manager, obviously. Himself and Sean Stack were the two players that I seem to dredge out of my memory from the 70s and early 80s, that they were the players that were you know, getting all-stars, but on teams that weren't winning anything, and were valiantly driving. And look, when I mentioned bitterness, I think it was an element of that bitterness for those players, that when they retired from playing, they brought that drive on to the next generation as well. And so they're the memories I have from it, actually, are valiantly losing, which is not a nice place to be.
Are you from Killaloe? Is that where your dad is from?
My dad was from Limerick. I was born in Ardnacrusha. I was born in Limerick, like most Clare people, but we lived on a farm in Ardnacrusha. In Clare, and we moved to Killaloe when I was 1. Right. So I know I'm a Killaloe man, and I'm definitely a Clare man. So Limerick Leader used to have a bit of a bitch and a moan about me at one stage, that I had that I'd abandoned Limerick, but no, I was a Clare man. So,
but your dad would have been, because I'm trying to establish what level of rugby there was in Clare. Your dad obviously played for the Lions, but he's a Limerick man.
Yeah, he's a Limerick man. Brendan Foley is a Limerick man, and we ended up having a couple of few internationals from Killaloo. And I think partly from the fact that our two dads had both played for Ireland. And actually, when the Foleys moved to Killaloo, and I don't know when that was, I think it was 79, 80, something like that. They moved into our house, lived on the top floor of our house when they were re-roofing their house, because our two dads knew each other. So I remember Foley as a 5-year-old kid, and we were friends from then on in, but it was as much to do with their father as to do with anything else. And there was a new rugby club set up in Killaloo in 79, Ballina Killaloo, which is still going today, which is a very vibrant club. And so there was rugby. There was a bit of rugby. There was rugby in Ennis. Ennis is a proud club, but it wasn't common. Definitely not. Though we always had matches out here in Killaloo, but it wasn't all over Clare. Definitely not. Clare is mostly a hurling county. There's definitely football on the west side of it, but we played little or none actually in Killaloo.
Right. I didn't realise that you'd lived with Foley when you were kids. Pretty amazing that the two of you end up going on to play for Ireland.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was funny. We played hurling together all the way through. He's 2 years younger than me, but he was taller than I was. And it's funny, I'm looking at his son at the present moment in time. Tony he's a damn sight taller than I am now. I'd say he's taller than his own father at 15, but he's growing like a weed. So Anthony was this big, skinny kid. As a hurler, it was quite entertaining because it's very funny. People keep talking back about how great he was as a hurler. And actually, he grew into a very good hurler, and he really did. But there was about 2 or 3 years, it was as if there was a puppeteer playing with him because he was trying to grow into his body. And he'd do 3 things that were unbelievably magic, 3 things that were dreadful, and the rest kind of the norm. But he became a fantastic hurler. And strangely, it was his release, I think, from rugby up until he died. He couldn't think of anything better than bringing his kids down for hurling training, down to Smith O'Brien's, and he did a couple of days a week, every week, irrespective of what was going on.
Go on, sorry, Nathan.
Keith, we've been talking throughout the Mount Rushmore about people who get on the Mount Rushmore and who miss out, and quite often GAA players are in maybe a more fortunate position because they wear the colours of the county week in, week out, and therefore it's sort of singed into your brain that they represent you. Whereas when you think of Anthony Foley, you think of the red of Munster more than the Clare colours. In terms of him being from Clare and him deserving to be on this Mount Rushmore, what did it mean, his Clareness to him and being part of that Munster side?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One is, if we're being honest, GAA is, I know Neil Francis said that rugby was becoming the main Irish game, and that was always rubbish. GAA is, and if you're in a football county, it's football, and if you're in a hurling county, it's hurling. And for us, it would have marked us up as being Claremen. We were always Claremen. We wanted to play hurling for Clare. That was the drive that we had when we were hurling, and there was a sense of that part about him. Now, Anthony was born in Limerick. He spent the first few years of his life in Limerick, but I would have said he identified as being a Clareman in a huge way. And yes, you're a Munsterman, and yes, but I think GAA takes that supersedence in terms of county colours because that's what you do. You play for your county. That isn't something that runs for rugby. So I don't know that you get kind of too bogged down in that. For Anthony, he would have been a very, very proud Clare man. He loved hurling. He played hurling underage for Clare. He never had the body for hurling, really. He might have had a window for it, same as myself, actually. And, I was fast, but I wasn't agile. And you suddenly learn that when you're 16 or 17, when people can spin on a sixpence and you're taking a sort of turning circle of an Arctic an Arctic trawler. But yeah, like Foley he knew where he was from. I think we were all proud of him for what he did, for A, playing for Ireland, which was pretty impressive, B, playing so many games for Munster, and I think bringing so many rural people around the province to follow him, not just from Clare. It made it very comfortable to follow country guys, and Munster is made up of a couple of big cities, but mostly country towns. And there's a link to everybody. So there was that level of, I would have said, everyman supporter around it. I think that came on the back of a lot of the players that played from the country. Look, we both went to the same school. We both went to St. Munchin's in Limerick. And that was a really good rugby school, but it was a rugby school that was built on principles of looking after the farmers from West Limerick. And latterly, in our time, it became a lot of the country folk from East Clare started going in. And if you look at it now, there's a huge amount from Clare going to St. Munchin's.
Were you guys boarders, or did you travel in and out every day?
I travelled in and out every day. Anthony boarders.
Right. And so that's like a half an hour commute every morning in and out of school?
Yeah. And look, I loved it. It was great. It was different. My brothers had gone there before me. It was very close to where we lived in Ardnacrusher. So when we lived in Ardnacrusher, it was very, very close. Look, it's just over the border. And for me, then I never even thought of going anywhere else. As my own three sons, there was no consideration of them going anywhere else. They're all in Munchin's as well.
I think the point you make about the awakening of a fan base and how a fan base is kind of electrified by certain individuals. It's the same in some ways that Sean O'Brien opened up Leinster from beyond the enclave that it was in to a bit where, Shane Horgan, followed by Sean O'Brien, followed by Tadhg Furlong. And maybe in Munster you had that already in that there was more of a hodgepodge from the All Blacks team. But in the professional era, you can kind of point to people like Foley.
Yeah, I think it was a harder sell in Leinster. I think it's an easier sell in Munster. And there was always a great link with the fans from rugby. He was with Shannon, I was with Gary Owen. There was a great link with those fans at that stage anyway, back in the early 90s. I do think that was part of it. Like, we use Munster as the province. Leinster, for a lot of the time, pretty much was just Dublin. Now, they never said that, they never meant that, but that was just the way it was taken. That's why we ended up getting a huge amount of supporters from Kilkenny, Carlow even. They'd say, they were kind of Leinster fans, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it was a big thing.
The Leinsters, yeah. I have a friend in Dublin. I call him Eddie Lunster. Still, he's in my phone as that, and I think he takes it okay still. But it's coming back to haunt us a little with Leinster doing so well.
Look, I've spoken like this before, but Leinster used to have banners up, D Fortress, and it was like, all right, fair enough. If that's your marketing tool, fair enough. But you should be aware of the fact that you're creating Leinsters all around the county. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I think it's important to have people to hang that hat on. And I guess that's the case for Foley, is that he was a brilliant player, a totemic figure as a leader, but also kind of has a wider context in uniting something bigger, which I think speaks to Nathan's point about the county colours. It's like he makes it okay for people in all across the county of Clare to stick their Munster jersey on, to feel proud of it.
Oh, I think so. I absolutely think so. And he held aloft the European Cup. Just can't get away from that fact. So that's it's one of those fantastic things. So, and I remember, I still remember him as a Clare man. I think some might call him a Limerick man, but I would remember him in Clare jerseys, you see. And that's the other thing. If you've managed to play for your county and you have the colours on, you know exactly where you're from,
So he did play as an underage, did he?
Oh, he did, yeah.
Right.
And we actually played on an East Clare team first, and I played, that was in 1988. We actually got to the Munster final. We played before the Cork-Waterford Munster final in 88. And he played in that, definitely. We got beaten by East Waterford by a couple of points, which really hurt me. I played for Clare. There was a combined Clare team then, the first ever Nina Milk quadrangular tournament they had in '88, which we'll talk about that in a minute too. And I think Foley played in that the following year, the year after. Look, pure Clare.
We haven't had a selector, correct me if I'm wrong, Ger, we haven't had a selector select themselves on Mount Rushmore. And Jamesie, I'm sure, is going to be too modest a little bit later to put himself up on the Clare Mount Rushmore, but he's unquestionably on the short list for his brilliance in '95 and man of the match in the final in '97. Can you talk a bit about Jamesie, Keith, and the reverence he's held within Clare and your memories of him growing up? Because I think he played, was it under 16 together?
Yeah, we did. I mean, I look at Jamesie. Jamesie was from Durp Airfield. They were a serious team. There were a lot of serious players in Clare at the time, and we looked on them with envy. From Killaloe, we weren't getting much of a run, and we weren't at that A level with 6 Mile Bridge, Cracklow. So the first time I got to see Jamesie was playing against Limerick. I was centre forward, he was wing forward, and Rory Murphy from Cracklow was the other wing forward. It's one of those great things that I can look back at it to this day. And I was a reasonable hurler in that I wasn't very big. I was getting big at that stage, and suddenly, I was able to break the ball very well. I was a good point scorer, good from frees. And it was just like a different game playing beside him. There was just no comparison. So I was doing everything by huge amounts of effort. He was doing everything with no effort. And he'd a flick in his wrists that I still can't do without breaking something. And, it's interesting when you look back when you're 16 years of age and you're playing beside someone who just does something so beyond anything of your capability. It's almost daunting and frightening to see it. But he was just a standout in that team, and he became the standout from every single game that went afterwards. And if I go back to Foley just for 1 minute, we came back from the World Cup in '95, and I had a bad injury, and I had surgery, and Foley had been back as well. But we went to that final. We got tickets. We were in the Nally stand in the final in '97, the All-Ireland. We were the first to leave the ground. We didn't stay for the trophy because we rushed back to Killaloe to go mad in Killaloe. We want to be there for all the madness later on. But that was the dream for us. And we were looking at players that we'd played with. There was a lot of guys in that team that we'd played with 6 or 7 years previously. And it was, you still wanted to follow them everywhere. And Jamesie, for me, was the embodiment of that, because he had a winning mentality, and he had a sense of skills that was just, I think, different for an awful lot. And it was, I remember talking about O'Driscoll, that when O'Driscoll got the hat-trick in 2000, I remember saying with him on the team, you weren't going to win every game, but nearly anything was possible. I have to say, I thought Jamesie was the same. That once he came along, there was a great team with him, and a lot of really good players, and a really good minor team that held together. A lot of those players held together. But with him on the field, you had an opportunity to win anything.
I think that when the ball's in his hand at the end of the '97 game and it's on the line, you don't actually feel like it's on the line because it's in Jamesie's hands. You know he's going to score. There was an absolute certainty that with this game apparently finely balanced, the right man, it was fate that the right man had it, and there was no opportunity for that to go anywhere except, no problems, straight over, we're going to win this game. Now, obviously, there's a late chance for John Lahey, but it was like, you just, like, there was a certainty that I very rarely see in intercounty hurling or football, where you just know that something is going to happen because somebody has reached such a high peak. And for me, that was the embodiment of the '97 team. I understand that Davy Fitz has criteria that see him in because he's a manager, and we can talk about that. But if you were picking, Keith, give me 3 names, will you? Because
look, I looked at a few. I think Foley, definitely. I think Jamesie. It's funny, I went for 4 names. Jamesie O'Connor. I went for Davy Fitz, and I think Davy is, half part mad and half part passionate, and they spill over into each other. I'm entertained by him. I asked him once, I said, "Why are you so mad, Davy?" And he absolutely raged at me, explaining why he wasn't mad, thus proving the fact that he was. But he's so passionate and he's such a winner. So I think having won as a player and winning as and becoming a coach and driving the teams on that have had little success, I just think he's done incredibly well. And I think you have to look at Kieran Fallon, because, and it's funny, I have no real love or interest in racing and horse racing, but I ended up buying a horse at one stage with a couple of friends years and years ago. And honestly, anytime we stuck Kieran Fallon on it, he won. So I kind of liked him for that reason too, you know. And like he look, I think there are people who excel and succeed, and I think they need to get that. So for me, Foley, Jamesie, Kieran, and Davy.
Right.
That's me just throwing them out there.
Right.
You know?
So no Ger and Nathan, and obviously no Keith Wood on your own one. So this is a good list. That's all I'm going to say. This is a good list, and I don't envy the lads with their selections a little bit later on. Keith, we've got to go. We're out of time. Is there anything else, just from a Clare sporting perspective, that you think is important that we kind of make notice of or pay attention to? Because there's a strain of madness through all of those lads that you're. It's some level.
I think we're comfortably mad. I think that kind of fits the bill for all of us. Look, if we think madness, I go back to one of our coach under 16 for Clare was Mike McNamara from Scariff. And it was funny, he was an avid rugby guy, but he was our coach for the hurling, and his fitness trainings were to be seen, to be believed. And none of us complained about it. So we were comfortably mad, I think, with that. I mean, there's other players and other people, and we're trying to think of different people that have come through for a while. You've Anthony's sister, of course, Rosie. You have Emer Considine, who played Gaelic football, camogie for Clare, and obviously has played rugby. But no, I think I'm happy enough to stick with those four.
That's not a bad list at all. Keith, great stuff this morning. Thanks a million for joining us.
Brilliant. Cheers, gents. All the best.